Appetite for Horror.
I'm sorry about your loss, Pastor. Don't think this was a case of road rage. Sarah was found with her hands zip-tied to the steering wheel. I'm acquainted with this sort of hurt. I know the futility.
How'd you get through it?
I got healed.
How?
Welcome to the podcast, Appetite for Horror, episode number 10. My name is Brando. Welcome to the podcast, Mr. Michael Lombardi. How are you, sir?
Hey, I'm great, Brando. How are you? Thank you so much for having me.
I'm doing well. And before we get to the Retaliators and the Blu-ray release, because I had so much fun watching it, I've been a fan of yours just for a while, since Rescue Me, and they talk about some of the best shows of all time, you know, Breaking Bad and things like that. But Rescue Me is so underrated to this day. You know, you being the rookie, Proby. So I've just thank you for coming on today. I'm excited because I've been a fan of yours for a while, and maybe just if you can talk about that experience working with Denis Leary and how early on in your career was that exactly? Were you almost a rookie, literally, when you were doing that?
That's pretty funny, man. Well, first, thank you for the kind words and being a fan. That obviously means so much. It's such a crazy, tough business. So when you actually get a job and people watch it and appreciate it, it's kind of like, it's pretty crazy, like that, I made this character come to life. I mean, the writing was so good. That was the true, I think, real reason the show was what it was. The writing was so real and so good. And just I think one of the things they didn't know, whether it was for award ceremonies or being underrated, whether it was a drama or a comedy, because you didn't know what was around that next corner. It was a real roller coaster. So thank you. I was basically a rookie. I've done a couple. I think I did a little. I had a line or two on Saturday Night Live. Kate Hudson was the special guest, on that. And then I did another show where I met Denis. He had a show called The Job on ABC.
Yep.
And I did a guest star on that. I was the Cabana Boy. It was pretty funny. The episode, really funny. He goes on vacation with his girlfriend in the show, who was played by Karen Parsons from The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. He goes on vacation and he gets really bad sunburn. So he's got to stay in his hotel the whole time. And she's going down to the pool and kicking it with me in the whole episode. And he's got his binoculars on, looking out the window, and he's like, "That son of a gun." So it's pretty funny. So that's how we became friends. And about a year after that, I did a show on Comedy Central with him. It was a spoof on Project Greenlight, actually. Remember that documentary with Ben Affleck and Matt Damon?
Yes.
So it was a really crazy, fun improv documentary style. It was people were supposed to perceive it as real, but it wasn't. And it was nuts. Peter Gallagher was in it, Colin Quinn, Lenny Clark. So anyway, I did that with him. It was like a 4-episode thing. And then a year after that, Rescue Me came my way. So to talk about Rescue Me quickly, I gave you a pretty long answer here. It was a blast. It was crazy. It was so fun being in New York City. We were in Long Island City, Queens, New York City, Brooklyn, Bronx, all over the borough shooting it. And just what an unbelievable understanding I got about the brotherhood of the fire department, not only FDNY, but around the country,
Right on. And not too far from where I am right now. I'm in Forest Hills, Queens. So it's
nice.
Yeah, so it seemed very local. I know you're an East Coast boy, right? You're from the area, aren't you?
That's right. I sure am. Yeah, I'm from about an hour and a half north of Manhattan. I've been in Manhattan a very long time. That's where I studied acting and the whole. That's where I came up doing theater, and luckily was able to work here for a long time. I mean, obviously I do my stints in LA and other places, but that's where I'm grounded, and I still am. So I'm happy about that.
Right. So I appreciate when I watch shows like Rescue Me or a movie like Retaliators and I hear that New York accent. It makes me feel at home, a little bit. Especially contrast to Denis Leary and the Massachusetts accent. So obviously with the comedic background that you have, how did the Retaliators come about and it just seemed like I was happy to see it. Such a departure from the roles I was used to seeing you in.
Yeah.
Blood all over your face, fighting, vicious. Are you a horror fan? Was this a new venture for you, or do you have experience in this genre?
Not to this level. No, certainly I am a horror fan. I've always been, but I will tell you this. Um, I'm not an expert in like it's not I mean I grew up watching amazing horror, all the films, but your staples, Nightmare on Elm Street, you could classify Jaws as a horror, Friday the 13th, Halloween, on and on. There's so many modern ones that I really like too. But so growing up with all that, I've always been a fan, always, and always been terrified. And I love the journey and I love the genre. But I read this script. It was written by the Gear brothers. And how it started, it's a really crazy story. And I'll just try to give you a toe in the water into it because it goes pretty deep. But basically, I used to write music with these guys. I had a little record deal back in 2009. Dennis wrote my band into to rescue me, actually, which was really fun and crazy and funny. But of course, in Rescue Me, the band sucks. It's like I'm the probie, and the guys are like, "Yeah, it wasn't as bad as it could have been." But my character caught a lot of crap in that show, as you know. So that was
Mhm.
one of the fun and kind of crazy things, but also with the music. So I had a real band, and we when around, like I said, 2009-ish, 2000, I had a little record deal. I used to go to, when I would be out in LA, my music manager at the time was like, "Hey man, you got to go write with these brothers. They're amazing musicians and songwriters." They had a huge band, and a record deal at the time. So I used to drive from LA to Orange County. That's where they lived, and write with them. And they're just Darren Gear. Our tastes were so aligned back then in music and our sensibilities, and we worked so well creatively. Many years had passed. I hadn't spoken with them in a long time, and I was on a set of another movie, little indie that I was doing, and I was doing a charity event, and like a couple weeks later. So I called him because one of the songs that we wrote together, it was called "When Heaven and Hell Collide." Actually, it was in drop D, and I needed to drop it. I was going to try to drop it a half step because I wasn't playing with my band, or we just needed to change the key. So I wanted to connect with Darren and ask him what he thought, if it would be too muddy in that key, so and we hadn't talked in a long time, and I'm like, "What have you been up to?" And he said, "Writing screenplays," he and his brother, over the course of the last 3 or 4 or 5 years. That was at that point, that was several years ago now. And I was like, "Oh my God, send them to me," because I knew how much I loved what he did. And he sent me a bunch, and the Retaliators was one of them. And I just love the script so much. I love the journey. I love the message. I love the slow burn. I love the Spielbergian Joe Dante-esque Gremlinsy kind of beginning, small town, and then this slow burn and the crazy journey that my character goes on in the film, and then where it ends up in this like crazy like bloodbath. This sort of, for lack of a better description, because that guy is the master at it, but like a Tarantino-esque kind of crazy ending. So, and I love the rock elements and the music. So I'm like, I got to make this thing. I want to play this character, John Bishop, and we got to get it done. So I went off to the races and just spent 3 years, doing it.
I love the term that's been going around with it is a gore fest. And as soon as I saw that, I'm just like, I'm in. I'm in all the way. And especially, because it is cool to see the development of your character who's a pastor, and it's not like he's a shady character. He's a legit pastor and has these things happen to him, and it gives you those questions that a lot of people wonder. Like, if something tragic happened to me, and if I just had a minute alone with this person, what would I do? And you're faced with that. And sometimes you make decisions I wouldn't have made, but that's why, you're a pastor, and I probably have a little bit of evil in me. You're like, "Oh, why did you do that?" I don't want to give any spoilers away. I know the movie's been out for a bit, but still, for those who haven't seen it and are waiting to get it on Blu-ray, I'm just like, did you have to also This one of the scenes that was sticking in my head and wondering how hard it was for you to film, in addition to the fight. So I'm curious if you how much you had to choreograph the fights you had to do, but the blood dripping into your eyes, like in certain scenes where it just looks like there's pools of blood in your closed eyes, like, or maybe even you open your eyes and it's getting in there. That's got to be a difficult. I mean, it's all over your face, man.
Yeah, that's fun. I'm so happy you love that shot. It's one of my favorite shots. I think there's one where I think it's a drone shot. Well, it turns into one. The camera might have been above me and then it pulls back.
Okay.
But I just had a battle with that, the subhuman, which aren't, it's interesting without any spoiler alerts. Like,
Right.
it's interesting what you might think, anyway, with the subhuman. And I had a huge fight with him. And when I throw him off me, the shot you're referring to is all the blood was dripping into my face from his throat. And yeah, man, then I'm just lying there and I felt that, I knew the shot, the setup was above me. And I'm like, I'm going to open my eyes in this one with full of blood. And I just went for it. And I was so happy with the result. It's so twisted and it doesn't even, to me, I was looking at it and I'm like, is that me? What the, it's a
Right.
really weird, kind of crazy shot. So yeah, that's one of my favorites, but the blood was pretty uncomfortable, man. Really, there's a lot of sticky stuff in it. It's like syrupy and there was so much of it throughout. By the end, they actually found I couldn't believe it. Like a different special effects person came on and I was like, wait a minute. The blood isn't as sticky as it's been the whole shoot. And he's like, oh yeah, you don't need. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Because the whole shoot, if you were like in between takes chilling, and actually there wasn't much time to chill because I was producing and directing a lot on this one. But the point being is that if you put your shirt would stick to your neck or your chin would stick down to your chest if you moved. It was so uncomfortable. But look, there's worse problems to have, right?
Absolutely. And I appreciate regardless of how sticky the blood was, the fact that it's real, well, not real blood, but just the real practical effects as opposed to CGI blood, which always takes me out of it. I mean, I was watching, I finally got to see Violent Night last night, and it's good, but there are scenes where I'm like, that's just obviously CGI blood, and it just in that moment it takes me out of it, as opposed to when, I mean, that's just my opinion, but like you're seeing, it's like I'm so in it, like it just keeps getting bloodier and bloodier and bloodier, and I'm not taken out of the scene at all and so I'm always a huge fan of like the 80s vibe. That's a lot of what people are saying, 80s action, 80s vibe. So I'm an 80s guy. I like the old school practical effects. So that's why
me too,
why I love
brother.
this movie.
Me too, man. Sorry to interrupt. I'm so happy that you I know you obviously have a trained eye and an intelligent eye, so it's really nice to hear you say that because we worked on those effects hard, man, or the practical effects and all the little just we would do them over. We had to go do some reshoots sometimes because those are tough to make work in the moment. You go again and again and again. But I didn't want to stop till we got them, so it means a lot for you saying that. So thank you. I'm happy with what ended up in the film too.
Yeah, and that's what I really look toward, because I spend a lot of my free time watching like really bad horror movies from like the 70s and 80s, but no matter how bad the acting is, whatever, I still always take joy in the practical effects. And when it all comes together, good acting, good story, good practical effects, that for me makes a good horror film. Plus, what you guys did with all the rock and roll in there with Jacoby Shaddix and Tommy Lee and Five Finger Death Punch. What was it like working with rock stars? Do you have any good stories working with Jacoby Shaddix, who did a great job? And Tommy Lee as a strip club DJ. Any good stories from working with rock stars on set?
Oh yeah, I mean that was a real stretch for Tommy Lee, right? I mean,
Right.
What happened was this, and he says that, and I've only actually done a few interviews with him, but he said the same thing, and everyone, it's pretty funny, of course. So here's the thing, man, it was incredible working with them. I think the biggest the thing that I'm personally most proud of, and I think that they should be too, is that their work was tremendous. I think that they're storytellers by nature, right? But they're on stage, they're telling the story of their song that they wrote. And it's bigger. So, you know, your movements and your actions might be bigger, where when you're on camera, you just want to keep it inside and keep it behind your eyes. You always have to have something going on, and it has to be real. But you know, they all came to play, man. These guys did their emotional preparation, if you will. Like, they got there, and we carefully chose their role. Like, that was the thing too. And I spoke with them all months before we got on set. Jacoby Shaddix is amazing in this. And the number one goal was to be like, hey, if you didn't know the band Papa Roach, you would just think Jacoby Shaddix was an actor in this. Then you'd go, holy cow, that's the front man of Papa Roach. Same thing with Five Finger Death Punch. Those guys play the motorcycle gang. Same thing with this girl's in Eva Under Fire, Eva Marie. She opens the film, one of the girls in the van. She has a great band. So it was great to have all these incredible rock stars. But then you have to go, for me, it could have been a negative, quite honestly. It could have been, because I wanted to have a real film first with story. I loved the movie. Then when I had the opportunity, Alan Kovac at Better Noise Music said to me, Michael, let's do this movie. And he got behind me 100% and just like let the movie, let us do our thing, you know? And he gave me all the musicians, you know, numbers, and he's like, call them, talk to them about their part. And anyway, he was absolutely incredible. But so talking to Jacoby, he knew where he was coming from. He knew his point of view, his perspective, his character's objective. He knew so it was really incredible what they brought when they got there, all of them. And to talk about their passion, and to give you one little story, there's a scene where Jacoby's like on top of me, and he's going to eat me, basically. His character's going to, and dude, he was so all in. So he's like straddling me. And the people are holding my arms down, right? He literally grabbed my hair and pulled my hair full blown method style, right? Pulling my hair backwards so he could and he licks my face from my chin to my forehead, like licks up because as the bad guy, this is what, you know, he likes. And he went all in on it. And I was like, oh my, afterward, I didn't want to stop him because his work was so good. And the camera was close, by the way, really close. So I didn't want it to look fake. You know, there are actor ways to pull someone's hair. You just like make a fist and put it on there. Then you let me act with it going back. And then you know, in terms of going all in and then he slaps me. And I'm like, I'm not going to give him one note. I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to, let's go. And we did a couple takes of it all out like that, and we got it. And by the way, I love that. I'm not saying, oh, we should do the other way, but I'm just pointing out the level of which this guy jumps into things, you know, like he was like, let's go all in, everything he did. And I can say the same for all the musicians across the board. They really, like, you'd see them in the corner preparing for the role, like mentally, or the scene, what they were going to do. And they just jumped in, and I thought we're all awesome.
Yeah, Jacoby, Ivan Moody from Five Finger Death Punch. I gotta ask though, because there was one scene that's kind of made me laugh, was when you were in the church towards the beginning. What was that? Asking Alexandria in there?
Oh no, From Ashes to New. Yeah,
From Ashes to New. It just seemed like, I don't know. Did you have to find a part for them? Like they're just playing with you guys in the church?
Well, it's pretty funny. There's two things. It's funny. That's a good point, and it's one worth, you know, mentioning.
Okay.
First of all, it's a modern day pastor, so there are modern day sermons, and I went to a few to study for the role, you know, and do my research. But the difference is, when I saw the location, I went, oh man, this is going to be tricky, because the church looked so old, you know, it was like one of those New England-y sort of old churches. So when I went to these sort of modern day sermons, the churches were much bigger and more modern looking, and they have full rock bands. They do this. So I was like, fine with it when we wrote them in that way. But then when we got into the location, I was like, whoa, all right, well, how's this justified? Look, we're not saying they're from ashes to new. They're just some rock band, right? In the community, or a special guest. And I then wanted to, it was Christmas Eve, so it's a special sermon, so it's justified. And then I improv'd a little bit, like, hey, because my character's supposed to be like a rock star in his role too, but where it ends up and how it goes. But so I think I improv the line, hey, don't be surprised if I next week's sermon I show up with blue hair, because it felt so crazy in the moment because obviously the guitar player has blue hair. And I think what you were alluding to is it was kind of crazy, right? That they were in that scenario. That's at least what I thought, but I think it's fun. And the movie doesn't take itself too seriously at times. I think it certainly does at many times. And I think there's a strong message, but I think what I love about it is that at other times it doesn't.
I agree, and that's what I liked about it too. And that's cool to learn that was an improv line by you, the blue hair, because that just brought it right back in, and it just showed you that he is a cool pastor, he is a cool dad, but he has quite a journey to go on. So I know we're out of time. Do we know if there's going to be a sequel, or if not, just what's next for you?
Well, thanks so much for asking. I would love there to be, because this genre is so fun, man. It's so beautiful. And I think music and horror, rock music, it's like they go hand in hand. What's around the corner, what you might be beating the hell out of someone or something, trashing a room, and then the next minute it could be you who's being chased, or you who's terrified, or you who's sad. So I just love the way this, and I think it's gone on for years with film and music, but I really was proud of the way this came together. And thanks for having me, and also enjoying the film. But for me, again, the thing that was so beautiful was to combine the two and have it be a real film, but with all these special people, and the soundtrack, just being so I just hold it really close to my heart. It was really nice picking the songs with Alan in the label, and really trying to put them in the right places so they enhance the audience's viewing experience and sort of heighten their emotional experience at times. So I hope there is another one, because it was a blast, obviously. Right now we're on Blu-ray. We're available on demand, Blu-ray. And there's a lot of special bonus features in the Blu-ray, which is cool. I don't know if you got to check any of them out, but there's some fun stuff. And we'll see where it goes. But I'm right now working on another film with the Gear brothers. We're just sort of, me and Randy Bricker and Darren and Jeff Allen Gear, we're working on something. Randy Bricker was my editor on this film, and he's I chose him, and he's a great guy, and like a producing partner and a creative partner. I chose him because he was an apprentice on the movie The Firm with Tom Cruise. That's how far back it goes. He was on I Am Legend. He edited on the Halloween franchise, and he's now the current editor on the Chucky series. So he has horror and story, which I thought was perfect for the Retaliators. So point I'm making is, me, him, and the Gear brothers are developing another film together. But we have the Retaliators mapped out if we get the opportunity.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to it all, Michael. I really appreciate your time. It was wonderful to meet you, and I hope we get to do this again.
Thanks, man. Me too. Let me at least put my camera on so I could be like, hey, what's up, man?
All right. Now I get to see your face. Now I can put this up later on.
Yeah. Sorry,
cool.
I didn't have it on, man. It's just been crazy, but it's good. It's good to see you, to meet you. Thank you very much for your time.
No worries. And I'll just ask this really quick, because I do cross, so I can promote it on my other podcast.
Yeah.
Favorite Guns N' Roses song, if you have one.
Oh my God. First thing that came into my November Rain, Live and Let Die. Obviously Welcome to the Jungle. Goes on, man. And I love the poster. I've seen those guys so many times in the day, man, in the 90s. I was probably at least 8 shows.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a big fan.
All right, so next time we'll talk about it. That's the Mothership podcast, Appetite for Distortion. This is the spinoff, Appetite for Horror. So looking forward to next time, Michael.
No way, man. I couldn't imagine a cooler freaking 2 podcasts. That's amazing, bro.
I get to talk about things I love, horror movies and Guns N' Roses.
Yeah.
Just
You know,
for
when I
fun.
was in LA, so Stephen Popcorn Adler was their original drummer, right?
Mhm.
Obviously. Then Matt Sorum took over, and I recorded something in his back house in LA in West Hollywood. So I got to meet Matt Sorum. He's the man.
Nice. He's actually my next guest on the podcast.
What?
Yeah. So
Oh my God.
I'll tag you when I get to so you
Yeah,
can listen to
please
it.
do.
So
That's
I don't want to
gonna
keep
be
the next
incredible.
guy waiting. I know what it's like to be on the other side of the mic and they're waiting. So thank you, Michael,
Thank
and
you.
we'll do this again.
Thank you, Brando. Be good, man. Thanks very much again.
So that does it for this episode of Appetite for Horror. Would have went a little longer, but Michael has another interview to get to, and that's just how it is sometimes. And it sounds like he will be back. Especially, I had no idea he was such a Guns N' Roses fan, so maybe get him on that podcast as well. But of course, this is all about horror. So what is to come on Appetite for Horror? Well, on the way, David Guy Levy, writer, director one of my favorite horror movies ever, really. Would You Rather, starring the great Jeffrey Combs. Such a fun horror movie. Can't wait to talk to him about that. And also, the legendary Gail Ann Hurd, who is an executive producer on The Walking Dead, Fear the Walking Dead, has such an amazing career, worked on The Terminators. Can't wait to talk to her about just her life in horror. So that is on the way as well. To keep up to date on who is going to be announced, perhaps maybe you can get into some questions on the podcast. And I put this out there on my GNR podcast sometimes. So, and I've done this. So if there is a guest that I announced that perhaps you want to be a guest co-host on, I can guest co-host. I could do radio with anybody. So that is always an opportunity to guest co-host with me on Appetite for Horror. But if you can see a guest you like, you just want a question asked, you could do that too. So the conversation continues always on social media. Appetite for Horror. Appetite, the number 4 horror on all the platforms, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So until next time, boils and ghouls.